They say you can't outrun destiny. But Dr. Arya Winters had spent 6 years in the remote mountains doing exactly that, running from a life that demanded she be someone she wasn't, hiding in a place where the only thing that mattered was whether you could stop the bleeding. She treated loggers with severed fingers, hikers with broken ankles, and the occasional hunter who'd learned the hard way that nature always fights back. But the night she found a massive silver wolf bleeding out in her clinic's parking lot, destiny stopped running and came straight for her throat. The storm had been battering Pinecrest Medical Clinic for 3 hours when Arya heard the scratching at the back door. Not unusual, injured animals often sought shelter during mountain storms. What was unusual was the size of the wolf that collapsed across her threshold when she opened the door. Easily 200 pounds, silver fur matted with blood and rain, eyes that flickered between unconscious gold and something disturbingly human. 3 deep gashes across its ribcage, a bear trap's teeth marks on its left hind leg, and blood, so much blood pooling on her sterile white floors. Jesus, she breathed, her medical training overriding her shock. She'd treated wolves before, though never one this size. Never one that looked at her with such intelligent desperation before its eyes rolled back. She worked through the night with the focused intensity that had made her the top trauma surgeon at Denver General before she'd walked away from it all. Before the hospital politics, the impossible hours, and her ex-fiancé's ultimatum had driven her to this isolated mountain town, where the biggest drama was usually Mrs. Chen's recurring gout. The wolf should have died. The wounds were too deep, the blood loss too severe. But as Arya stitched and cleaned and administered antibiotics meant for animals 3 times smaller, something strange happened. The wounds began closing faster than should be possible. Not healing completely, but knitting together as if time itself had accelerated. "What are you?" she whispered, watching tissue regenerate beneath her fingers. By dawn, the storm had passed, and the wolf was sleeping peacefully on the examination table she'd covered with every blanket in the clinic. Its breathing was steady, strong. Impossible, but real. Arya should have called animal control. Should have reported a wolf this size in the area. Instead, she pulled up a chair and watched it sleep, noting details that made her medical mind itch with questions. The symmetry of its features was too perfect. Its paws were massive, but the claws were oddly well maintained. And those moments when its eyes had been open, there had been recognition there, understanding. Her phone buzzed. Her assistant Jamie, texting that they were snowed in and wouldn't make it to the clinic today. Good. Arya needed time to figure out what to do with her unusual patient. She reached out tentatively, running her fingers through the wolf's silver fur. It was surprisingly soft, warm. The moment her skin made contact, the wolf's eyes snapped open, fully gold now, burning like molten metal. It didn't growl or snap. Instead, it went completely still, staring at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Easy," she murmured. "You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf made a sound. Not quite a whimper. Not quite a growl. Something that sounded almost like frustration. Then it did something that made Arya's blood run cold. It bowed its head, in what could only be described as gratitude, or submission, or recognition. No wild animal behaved this way. The wolf, because Arya refused to think of it as anything else despite mounting evidence otherwise refused to leave. 3 days passed. 3 days of Arya canceling appointments, claiming a personal emergency, while she tried to figure out what to do with the massive predator currently occupying her clinic's recovery room. 3 days of watching it heal at an impossible rate. 3 days of catching it watching her with those unsettlingly intelligent gold eyes. It ate the raw meat she brought from the butcher, but delicately, almost reluctantly. It allowed her to check its wounds, standing perfectly still during examinations like it understood medical procedures. And strangest of all, it followed her everywhere, staying within 10 feet at all times. "You need to go back to the wild," she told it on the 3rd evening, gesturing toward the door she'd left open. "You're healed enough. Whatever you are, you don't belong here." The wolf sat down, wrapped its tail around its paws, and simply stared at her. Arya ran her hands through her dark hair, exhaustion and frustration warring in her chest. She'd left Denver to escape complications, not to acquire a 200-pound shadow with predator eyes. That night, She fell asleep in her small apartment above the clinic and woke to find the wolf lying across her doorway, guarding her, protecting her. Something warm and terrifying unfurled in her chest. The next morning, everything changed. Arya was making coffee when she heard a sound that didn't belong in her quiet mountain town. Motorcycles, lots of them. She looked out the window to see a convoy of bikes pulling into Pinecrest's main square, riders all wearing the same symbol, a silver wolf's head. Her stomach dropped. The wolf, which had been sleeping peacefully, suddenly surged to its feet, a growl rumbling through its chest that made the windows rattle. "Hey, easy," Arya started, but the wolf was already moving, positioning itself between her and the window. A knock at the clinic's door made them both freeze. "Dr. Winters?" A woman's voice, smooth as silk and sharp as glass. "We're looking for someone." "Large wolf, silver fur. Injured about 4 days ago. We have reason to believe he sought shelter here." Arya's medical training kicked in. "Patient. Confidentiality applied to animals too, right?" "I'm sorry, but I haven't seen..." The door exploded inward. 5 people poured inside, moving with inhuman speed. 3 men, 2 women, all radiating danger. They weren't dressed like typical bikers. Their clothes were too fine, their bearing too regal. The woman in front had copper hair and eyes like chips of amber. "We can smell him," she said flatly. "Where is our king?" "King." The word hung in the air like a blade. The wolf, the king, stepped into view, placing itself directly between Arya and the intruders. Another growl, this one carrying a note of command that made even Arya want to bow. The 5 dropped immediately to one knee. "Your Majesty," the copper-haired woman breathed. "Thank the moon goddess. We've been searching." Her eyes cut to Arya, and something dangerous flashed across her face. "What is a human doing with..." The wolf snarled, and the woman went silent. Arya's mind was reeling. "King. Majesty." These people had just called her patient a king. These people who moved too fast and smelled the air like predators and, "You're werewolves," she said faintly. "All of you." "Very astute, doctor," one of the men said dryly. He was massive, with dark skin and silver threading through his black hair. "And our king has apparently been playing house with a human for 4 days. This ought to be interesting." The copper-haired woman shot him a glare before turning back to Arya. "I am Saskia, the king's second. These are members of his high guard. We've been tracking him since he was ambushed by rogues near the border. He should have returned to the palace days ago." "Palace?" Arya repeated numbly. "The Moonshadow Court, 3 hours north." Saskia's tone suggested Arya was an idiot for not knowing. "Where our king rules over the largest werewolf pack in North America. Now, if you'll step aside." The wolf moved faster than thought, teeth bared at Saskia. Everyone froze. "He won't let us near him," one of the other high guards murmured. "He's protecting her." Saskia's eyes narrowed, studying Arya with new intensity. "Impossible. He's been searching for his mate for 10 years. There's no way a human..." She stopped, nostrils flaring. "Unless..." "Unless what?" Arya demanded, fear and confusion making her bold. Saskia's expression shifted from hostility to shock to something like horror. "Unless his wolf recognized her before he did." "Your Majesty," she addressed the wolf directly. "If this human is your mate, you need to shift and confirm. The pack is in chaos without you. Rogues are massing at our borders. We don't have time for..." The wolf turned its back on Saskia and looked at Arya. Really looked at her, with those burning gold eyes that held too much intelligence, too much emotion, too much everything. Then it began to change. Arya stumbled backward as the wolf's form rippled, bones cracking and reshaping, with sounds that would haunt her nightmares. Silver. Fur receded into human skin. 4 legs became 2. The massive lupine head reformed into features that were devastatingly, impossibly beautiful. In less than 30 seconds, where a wolf had stood, there was now a man. Naked, powerfully built, with silver hair that fell to his shoulders, and those same molten gold eyes. Scars crossed his torso, some old, some new, including the 3 she'd stitched just days ago. "Hello, Arya," he said, his voice rough like gravel and honey. "My name is Callahan Silvercrest, and you, apparently, are my mate." Then he collapsed. Arya's medical training saved her from complete panic. As Callahan Silvercrest, the werewolf king who'd been masquerading as her patient, crumpled to the floor, she was already moving, checking his pulse, his breathing, her hands steady even as her mind screamed. "He's not fully healed," she snapped at Saskia. "Shifting must have torn the wounds. I need everyone out, now." "You don't give orders to the High Guard," one of the men started. "My clinic, my patient, my rules." Arya's voice cracked like a whip. "Out, or I let him bleed out on this floor while you argue protocol." Saskia raised a hand, silencing the others. "You heard her. Clear the building. Maintain perimeter. No one enters without my permission." She turned to Arya, respect grudging in her amber eyes. "You have 1 hour to stabilize him, doctor. Then we need to move him to Moonshadow Court. We're proper healers." "Your proper healers didn't keep him alive when he was dying 4 days ago." Arya shot back, already hauling Callahan's considerable weight toward the examination table. "I did." She caught the flash of something in Saskia's expression: surprise, maybe even approval before the High Guard filed out. Alone with her patient, her mate, according to him, a concept she absolutely was not processing right now. Arya worked with practiced efficiency. The wounds had reopened, but not catastrophically. She cleaned, restitched, administered antibiotics. Her hands were steady, her mind was chaos. Werewolves, kings, mates. She'd left Denver to escape destiny, and destiny had literally collapsed, bleeding on her doorstep. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered to his unconscious form. "Why stay as a wolf? Why not shift and explain?" "Because I was afraid," a rough voice answered. Arya jumped. Callahan's eyes were open, gold boring into her. He'd pulled a sheet across his lap for modesty, but his torso was still bare, showing the fresh stitches and old scars that told stories of violence. "Afraid?" she managed. "You're a king. Being a king doesn't make you fearless. It just means more people count on you not to show it." He tried to sit up, winced, allowed her to ease him back. "I'd been searching for my mate for a decade, Arya. 10 years of hoping, disappointments, false starts. When I woke up in your clinic and smelled you vanilla and antiseptic and something uniquely yours, my wolf, knew immediately." "Knew what?" "That you were ours. That after 10 years of searching, I'd found you while dying in a parking lot." His laugh was bitter. "And you were human. Not a wolf, not part of our world. A human who looked at me with clinical detachment and medical efficiency, who saw a wounded animal, not a potential mate." Arya's throat tightened. "So, you just stayed? As a wolf?" "I told myself I was too weak to shift. That I needed more healing time." "But the truth?" His gold eyes held hers. "I was terrified that if I became human, if I told you what you were to me, you'd reject me. At least as your patient, you had to care for me, had to touch me, talk to me, let me stay near you." Something ached in Arya's chest. She recognized that fear. She'd felt it herself, back in Denver, when her ex-fiancé Marcus had given her the ultimatum: the hospital or him, her calling or their future. She'd chosen the hospital, and he'd made sure everyone knew she'd picked career over love. That she was cold, unfeeling, married to her work. Maybe that's why she'd run to the mountains. Not to escape complications, but to escape the pain of being told that who she fundamentally was would never be enough. "I don't understand this mate thing," she said quietly. "I don't understand your world. But I need you to understand mine. I'm not some prize to be claimed. I'm not a piece that fits into anyone's puzzle just because biology or magic or fate says so." "I know." Callahan's hand moved, stopping just short of touching hers. "The mate bond doesn't erase choice, Arya. It just means our souls recognize each other. What we do with that recognition is up to us." Before she could respond, Saskia burst through the door, her expression urgent. Forgive the interruption, Your Majesty, but we have a situation. The rogues who ambushed you? They've been tracked to Pinecrest. They're in the town. And they're asking questions about a human doctor who might have treated an injured wolf. Arya's blood ran cold. Why would they care about? Because, Saskia interrupted, if they figure out you're the king's mate, before we can get you both to safety, you become leverage. They can't kill Callahan, he's too powerful. But you? Her amber eyes were sympathetic. You're human, fragile, the perfect hostage. Callahan tried to stand, swayed dangerously. How many? At least a dozen. Maybe more. Saskia's jaw tightened. You're in no condition to fight, Your Majesty. We need to evacuate. Now. I'm not leaving my clinic, Arya protested. This town, these people, they're my responsibility. And you're mine? Callahan growled, the command in his voice making her spine straighten involuntarily. Then, softer. Please, Arya. I just found you. I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose you before I even have a chance. The sound of breaking glass came from downstairs, then screams from the street outside. Too late, Saskia said grimly. Silver claws, extending from her fingertips. They're here. The rogues came through the windows like a pack of nightmares given flesh. Arya had exactly 3 seconds to process what she was seeing before Saskia shoved her behind the examination table and shifted mid-leap, her human form exploding into a copper-furred wolf that met the first attacker in mid-air. The clinic erupted into chaos. Snarls and screams, the crash of equipment, the smell of blood, both human and wolf. Through it all, Callahan tried desperately to shift, his body rippling but failing, too weak from blood loss and the recent transformation. Damn it! He grabbed a surgical tray, wielding the metal like a weapon as another rogue crashed through the door. Arya, run! But Arya had spent 6 years in Denver General's trauma center. She'd worked gang shootings, multi-car pileups, mass casualty events. Panic was a luxury she'd trained herself out of. She grabbed the largest scalpel from her instrument table and pressed herself into the corner, analyzing exits, counting attackers, looking for patterns. 5 rogues inside, 3 more circling outside based on the shadows. The High Guard was fighting, but they were outnumbered. And Callahan, powerful or not, was barely standing. A rogue broke through Saskia's defense, a massive gray wolf with scars crisscrossing its muzzle and eyes that held too much intelligence for a mindless beast. It stalked toward Arya, ignoring the chaos around them, focused entirely on her. The human, it growled, its voice distorted but understandable. The king's mate. Perfect. Callahan roared, throwing himself between them despite his wounds. Blood immediately soaked through his bandages. Touch her and I'll tear you apart with my bare hands. The scarred wolf laughed a terrible, chilling sound. You're barely standing, Your Majesty. How exactly do you plan to? Arya didn't let it finish. She'd spent 6 years studying anatomy, learning exactly where to cut to, save lives. She knew just as precisely where to cut to end them. The scalpel slid between the rogue's ribs like butter, finding the precise spot where canine and human anatomy overlapped. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to hurt. To surprise, to give them seconds. Run! She screamed at Callahan. But Callahan didn't run. Instead, something changed in his eyes. The gold ignited to white-hot flame. When he spoke, his voice carried power that made the very air vibrate. I am Callahan Silvercrest, Alpha King of Moonshadow Court, son of the Silver Moonline, heir to the ancient pact. The words felt ritualistic, primal. And you have threatened my mate. Power exploded from him like a shockwave. Every wolf in the room, rogue and High Guard alike, was driven to their knees by the sheer force of his alpha command. Even Saskia whimpered, fighting the compulsion to submit. Only Arya remained standing, untouched by the supernatural force, watching in awe as Callahan finally, fully shifted. This wasn't the wolf she'd treated in her clinic. That had been impressive. This was godlike, easily the size of a small horse, silver fur that seemed to glow with its own light, eyes like twin suns. This was what a wolf king looked like when he stopped holding back. The fight lasted less than a minute. Callahan tore through the rogues with surgical precision, not killing, but incapacitating, leaving them broken and whimpering on her clinic floor. When the last one fell, he turned to Arya, his massive wolf form trembling with exhaustion and rage and something else. She should have been terrified. She'd just watched a man become a monster and destroy a dozen attackers. Instead, she walked forward and placed her hand on his silver muzzle. "You're bleeding again," she said calmly. "And you probably ripped half your stitches. Sit down before you pass out." The Wolf King blinked at her. Then, incredibly, Saskia shifted back to human form, staring at Arya with naked shock. "You just ordered the Alpha King to sit." "And he did. He's my patient," Arya said firmly, already examining Callahan's wounds. "And patients follow doctor's orders." One of the other high guards, the big man with silver-streaked hair, laughed loud enough to shake the walls. "Oh, I like her. Your Majesty, you've found yourself a mate with teeth." Callahan shifted back to human, Saskia quickly throwing him a blanket for modesty. His face was pale, his breathing labored, but his eyes were warm as they found Arya's. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said quietly. "Sorry you had to defend yourself. Sorry." "Stop apologizing for being what you are," Arya interrupted. She was cleaning the reopened wounds with hands that only trembled slightly. "You protected me. You all did. That matters more than the how." "The rogues will report back," Saskia said grimly, already binding her own wounds. "Now they know for certain you're the king's mate. Every wolf in North America will know by morning." "Then we need to disappear," Callahan said. "Arya needs to come with us to Moonshadow Court where—" "No." Everyone turned to stare at Arya. "No?" Callahan repeated carefully. "I have patients here, a town that depends on me. I'm not abandoning them because some rogues decided I'm leverage." She met his gold eyes steadily. "I understand this mate thing puts a target on my back. But running won't change that. If anything, it confirms I'm valuable enough to chase." "She's right," the silver-haired highguard said thoughtfully. "Running makes her look weak. Staying makes her look protected, untouchable." Saskia's eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting we bring the full weight of the Moonshadow Court here? To defend one human town?" "I'm suggesting," Arya said before anyone else could speak, "that you teach me to defend myself. I stabbed one of them tonight with a scalpel. Imagine what I could do with actual training." Callahan looked at her for a long moment. Then, despite his exhaustion and pain, he smiled. Truly smiled for the first time since she'd met him. "You're not at all what I expected in a mate," he said. "Good," Arya replied. "I'm not particularly interested in meeting expectations. Now sit still while I restitch these wounds." Again. Outside, dawn was breaking over Pinecrest, painting the mountain town in shades of gold and silver. In the clinic, surrounded by broken glass and blood and the aftermath of violence, a human doctor stitched up a werewolf king while his pack watched in amazement. The mate bond Callahan had feared she'd reject thrummed between them, warm and right and terrifying. But Arya Winters had never been one to back down from terrifying. She'd figure this out, one stitch at a time. Moonshadow Court arrived in Pinecrest, like a tidal wave of supernatural power, barely contained in civilized clothing. 20 more highguards, 3 senior advisors, and a woman Saskia introduced with barely concealed distaste as Celestine Ravenna, the court's high seer and His Majesty's former betrothed. Arya was cleaning blood off her clinic floor when Celestine swept in, all willowy grace and midnight hair, her silver eyes assessing Arya like one might evaluate a particularly disappointing piece of furniture. "This is the human?" Celestine's voice was beautiful, melodic. It made Arya want to punch her. "Callahan, surely you're mistaken. The prophecies said your mate would be..." "Celestine." Callahan's voice was quiet, but carried enough warning to make the seer close her mouth. He was sitting on the examination table again, freshly bandaged, looking exhausted, but alert. Arya saved my life. She's defended herself against rogues. She's refused to run. Perhaps your prophecies need updating. Celestine's smile was sharp as glass. Or perhaps the mate bond has been misread. It wouldn't be the first time a king mistook proximity and gratitude for destiny. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Careful, Saskia growled. You're speaking about your queen. Am I? Celestine turned those unnerving silver eyes on Arya. Has she accepted the bond, been marked, gone through the mating ceremony? Or is she simply a human doctor who happened to be convenient? Arya set down her mop carefully, acutely aware of every supernatural being in the room watching her. This felt like a test. Maybe even a trap. I'm a human doctor, she said calmly, who happened to save your king's life when he was bleeding out in a parking lot. Whether I'm convenient or destined, or just catastrophically unlucky, remains to be seen. But I'm not going anywhere just because some prophecy says I don't fit. Silence. Then Callahan laughed. Actually laughed, the sound filling the clinic with warmth. I knew I liked you, he said. Then to Celestine, the council will accept my mate. They don't have a choice. The bond is real whether you approve or not. The council may have something to say about a human queen. One of the advisors interjected nervously. He was older, with gray threading through his dark hair and spectacles perched on his nose. There are concerns about bloodlines, about her ability to bear heirs, about whether I'm strong enough, Arya interrupted. Durable enough? Useful enough? She'd heard these arguments before, in different words. Marcus had made them when he demanded she quit surgery. I've survived medical school, residency, and 6 years of trauma surgery. I stabbed a rogue werewolf with a scalpel last night. I think I can handle your council's concerns, the advisor blinked. Yes. Of course, Dr. Winters. I didn't mean to imply. Yes, you did. Arya wasn't angry, just tired. And that's fine. You don't know me. But you will, because I'm not going to fail just to make your prophecies feel better about themselves. Celestine's expression shifted, something like respect flickering across her face. Perhaps, there's more to you than I thought. But prophecy aside, you need to understand what you're walking into. The Moonshadow Court is not simply a pack, Dr. Winters. It's a political entity with alliances, enemies, and centuries of tradition. As the king's mate, you'll be expected to navigate politics, maintain alliances, represent his interests, and probably look decorative at formal functions, Arya finished. I worked in hospital administration. I know how hierarchies and power structures work. Hospital administration, Celestine repeated, her tone suggesting Arya had just compared a nuclear reactor to a campfire. Where I regularly negotiated with insurance companies who'd rather let patients die than pay for treatment, surgeons with god complexes, and board members more concerned with profit margins than mortality rates. Arya met the seer's silver eyes steadily. I imagine your counsel will be a refreshing change. At least you admit your predators. This time, several of the High Guards laughed outright. Callahan's expression was warm, proud even, as he watched her hold her own against his court. Arya's staying here, he announced. Moonshadow Court will establish a presence in Pinecrest. Rotating High Guards. Security measures. Whatever's necessary. But she's not being dragged away from her life just to satisfy protocol. Your Majesty, the bespectacled advisor protested. The council will insist she come to the court for the formal presentation. Tradition demands. Then tradition will wait until my maid is ready. The command in Callahan's voice left no room for argument. I've searched for her for 10 years. I'm not losing her because the council can't be patient for a few more weeks. Celestine studied them both with those unsettling silver eyes. The bond is genuine, she said finally, and it sounded like the words cost her. I can see it now. Threads of fate wrapped around you both like chains, or perhaps ropes pulling you toward something inevitable. Chains or ropes? Arya asked. That depends entirely on whether you embrace the bond or fight it. Celestine's smile was not kind. But know this. Dr. Winters, the mate bond is not a fairy tale. It will demand everything from you. Your humanity, your freedom, possibly your life. Callahan's enemies will use you against him. The court will test you constantly, and the longer you remain unmated, the more vulnerable you both become. Vulnerable how? Arya demanded. Saskia answered, her tone grim. An incomplete mate bond is like an open wound in the supernatural world. Other wolves can challenge Callahan's claim. You can be marked by another alpha if you're not protected by the king's bite. And worst of all, the bond itself will degrade, becoming painful, destructive, potentially fatal to both parties. The clinical part of Arya's mind categorized this as important medical information. The rest of her was too busy panicking. How long do we have? She asked, quietly. Before the bond becomes dangerous? Celestine's expression was calculating. 3 months. Maybe 4. After that, the deterioration accelerates. 3 months to decide if she wanted to permanently bind herself to a werewolf king. To leave behind humanity for a world of magic and violence and politics. 3 months to choose between the life she'd built and a destiny she'd never asked for. Then we have 3 months, Arya said firmly, to get to know each other, to let me learn about your world, to figure out if this mate bond is fate or just supernatural biology trying to make decisions for us. Callahan's hand found hers, warm and solid. 3 months, he agreed. No pressure, no expectations. Just us. Celestine laughed, the sound like breaking ice. You're both fools if you think fate will give you 3 months of peace. The rogues know about her now. By tomorrow, every pack in North America will know the Alpha King has found his mate, and she's human. Let them know, Callahan said, his gold eyes blazing. Let them try to take her. I've spent 10 years searching. I'll spend the next 100 protecting her, if that's what it takes. Outside, more motorcycles roared into Pinecrest, the High Guard establishing their presence, claiming the town as under the court's protection. Arya looked at her clinic, her sanctuary, her escape, her carefully built life, and watched it transform into something else entirely. A battleground, a political chess piece, a symbol of whatever this mate bond meant, but also, still hers. I need to check on my patients, she said, pulling her hand from Callahan's. Not rejection, just space. People in town will be terrified after last night. I need to make sure they're okay. I'll come with you, Callahan said immediately. No. Arya's tone was gentle but firm. You need to rest. Your wounds need time to heal without you tearing them open, fighting or shifting or doing whatever supernatural thing you're about to do next. Stay here. Let your people guard you. I'll be fine. Arya. I've walked these streets for 6 years without supernatural protection. I think I can manage one more afternoon. She grabbed her medical bag, then paused. Besides, if I'm going to be your mate, if I'm going to stand beside you in front of this council, I need them to see. I'm not just some fragile human who needs constant protection. I need them to see I can take care of myself. Callahan looked like he wanted to argue. But something in her expression must have convinced him, because he nodded slowly. Take 2 high guards, non-negotiable, and keep your phone on. Deal. As Arya headed for the door, Celestine's voice stopped her. Dr. Winters? One more thing. The seer's silver eyes gleamed with something that might have been warning or might have been curiosity. I've seen fragments of your future, fire and blood. Choices that will break kingdoms. You're going to change everything, whether you mean to or not. Cryptic prophecies are not helpful, Arya said dryly. No. Celestine agreed. But they're honest. The question is, will you be ready when the fire comes? Arya thought about the scalpel she'd driven into a rogue's ribs. About standing her ground when every instinct screamed to run. About choosing the mountains over Marcus's ultimatum. I guess we'll find out, she said, and walked out into the morning sun, with 2 werewolf guards flanking her like shadows. Behind her, in the clinic that had become ground zero for her new impossible life, a werewolf king watched her go with eyes that held 10 years of longing and 3 months of hope. The countdown had begun. Pinecrest reacted to the supernatural occupation about, as well as Arya expected. Poorly. Mrs. Chen barricaded herself in her house and refused to come out for her blood pressure medication. The Hendersons, a family of loggers, showed up at the clinic armed with silver bullets and holy water they'd ordered overnight from some questionable internet site. Even Jamie, her unflappable assistant, who'd seen everything in 6 years of mountain medicine, called to quit over the phone. "I appreciate the opportunity, Dr. Winters. But I didn't sign up for werewolves. My mom's freaking out. My boyfriend thinks I'm going to get eaten. I can't." Arya stood in the middle of Main Street, phone pressed to her ear, watching high guards patrol in shifts while tourists fled and locals hid, and felt her carefully built life crumbling. "I understand," she said quietly. "I'll mail your final paycheck." She ended the call and found Saskia watching her with those unreadable amber eyes. "Your people fear us," the high guard said. "It wasn't a question. Wouldn't you? A week ago, they thought werewolves were movie monsters. Now there's 20 of you patrolling their town." Arya rubbed her temples, exhaustion making her sharp. "They need time, and probably therapy." "We don't have time." Saskia gestured to the mountains surrounding them. "The rogues are regrouping. They'll attack again. Probably in force. If your people won't accept our protection, then I need to convince them." Arya looked at the shuttered windows, the empty streets. "Town meeting, tonight. I'll explain what's happening." "You'll tell them about the mate bond?" Saskia sounded skeptical. "I'll tell them enough, that the attack wasn't random, that your king is here for a reason, that the Highguard presence is temporary. Lie. Everything about this felt permanent, and that I'm not abandoning them." That afternoon, Arya drafted a message on every community board, every social media group, every communication channel Pinecrest had. Emergency town meeting, 7 p.m., community center, mandatory attendance, free coffee, and Mrs. Patterson's famous cookies. The bribery worked. By 7 p.m., the community center was packed with every resident, brave or curious enough to show up. Arya stood at the front, acutely aware of Callahan in the back row, trying to look inconspicuous and failing miserably. Even seated, even trying to blend in, he radiated power. "I know you're scared," Arya began without preamble. "I know the past week has been confusing and terrifying. I know you have questions." "Are you one of them?" someone shouted from the back. "No. I'm human. Completely, boringly human." Arya held up her hands. "But I did save the life of someone very important to their world. And that's made me valuable. A target." "So they're here to protect you?" Mrs. Chen demanded, clutching her purse like a weapon. "We're in danger because of you?" The accusation hit harder than it should have. Arya forced herself to stay calm. "Yes," she admitted. "I'm sorry. I never meant for this to affect anyone else. But the alternative, me leaving, the Highguard abandoning Pinecrest, means you'd all be vulnerable to the rogues who attacked. The ones who don't follow rules or care about human life. And these ones do?" A logger gestured at the Highguards lining the walls. "Care about human life?" Before Arya could answer, Callahan stood. The entire room went silent. "My name is Callahan Silvercrest," he said, his voice carrying, despite not being raised. "I'm the Alpha King of Moonshadow Court, the largest werewolf pack in North America. And I'm here because Dr. Winters saved my life when I was dying." He moved forward, every eye tracking him. Arya saw fear in some faces, curiosity in others, calculation in a few. "I understand your fear. My kind has remained hidden for centuries. You've built your lives believing we were myths. That safety was guaranteed as long as you stayed ignorant." He stopped beside Arya, his presence overwhelming. "That illusion is gone now. I'm sorry for that. but I won't apologize for protecting what's mine." The possessive declaration sent murmurs through the crowd. "She's not property," someone muttered. "No," Callahan agreed, surprising everyone. "She's not. She's my mate. Think of it as the supernatural equivalent of a soulmate, and I'd die before I let anyone harm her. But that protection extends to this town, to all of you, because she cares about you. I care about you. Your safety is my priority, not because I'm generous, but because it matters to her." The logic was manipulative and romantic in equal measure. Arya wanted to argue but couldn't fault the strategy. An older man stood, his weathered face thoughtful. "How long?" "Excuse me?" Callahan asked. "How long will you be here? How long does this protection last?" Callahan's jaw tightened. He looked at Arya, something vulnerable in his gold eyes. "That depends on Dr. Winters. If she accepts the mate bond permanently, my protection of this town becomes eternal. If she doesn't." He didn't finish, but the implication was clear. The crowd's attention shifted to Arya. She felt their judgment, their fear, their hope, all pressing down like physical weight. "I don't know," she said honestly. "This world, your world, is new to me. I'm still figuring out what it means, what I want. But I promise you this, I'm not going anywhere. Pinecrest is my home. These are my people. Whatever I decide about the mate bond won't change that." Mrs. Chen stood, her expression softening slightly. "You've been good to us, Dr. Winters. When my husband was dying, you sat with me for 6 hours. When the Peterson boy broke his leg skiing, you drove through a blizzard to set it. We trust you." Others nodded, small gestures of support that made Arya's throat tight. "Then trust me now," she said. "Trust that I'm trying to keep you safe. Trust that these wolves," she gestured at the High Guard, "are here to help, not harm. And trust that if I tell you to run, to hide, to fight, I'm doing it to protect you." The meeting didn't end with cheers or acceptance, but it ended with cautious agreement. Pinecrest wouldn't fight the High Guard presence. In exchange, the wolves would minimize their visibility, respect human boundaries, and stay the hell out of Mrs. Chen's garden. Small victories. As the crowd dispersed, Arya found herself alone with Callahan under the community center's dim lights. "You didn't tell them about the 3-month deadline," he observed. "Would it have helped? Made them less afraid to know that if I don't accept the bond, you'll both deteriorate and the protection might vanish?" She shook her head. "They have enough to worry about. What about you?" He moved closer, not touching but near enough that she felt his warmth. "What do you have to worry about?" "Everything," she admitted. "I worry about losing myself in your world, about becoming someone I'm not just to fit, about failing you, your court, these people, about making the wrong choice and regretting it forever." "And if there is no wrong choice?" Callahan asked softly. "What if every path leads somewhere worth going?" Spoken like someone who's never made a catastrophic mistake. "I've made plenty." His smile was sad. "I spent 10 years searching for you in all the wrong places, looking for someone who fit prophecies and expectations instead of simply looking for someone real. I wasted a decade, Arya. Don't waste your 3 months trying to be perfect. Just try to be honest, with me and yourself." Before she could respond, Saskia burst through the door, her expression urgent. "Your Majesty, we have a problem. The council's called an emergency session. They're demanding Dr. Winters appear before them immediately to verify the mate bond." "Tell them to wait," Callahan said flatly. "They're threatening to declare the bond illegitimate if she doesn't appear within 72 hours. If that happens..." Saskia's amber eyes flicked to Arya. "The protection of the court won't extend to her, or this town, and any alpha will be free to challenge your claim." Callahan's expression turned thunderous. They wouldn't dare. Celestine returned early and gave her report. "Some council members are skeptical about a human queen. They want proof." Saskia's tone made it clear what she thought of their skepticism. We have 3 days to get Dr. Winters to Moonshadow Court, or everything falls apart. Arya felt the walls closing in. 3 months had just become 72 hours. Then we go, she said before Callahan could argue. If the only way to buy time is to face your counsel, that's what we do. Arya, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She met his eyes steadily. You said it yourself. I'm yours. That means your problems are my problems. Your counsel wants proof? Let's give them proof. Callahan looked at her for a long moment, something fierce and possessive and tender burning in his gold eyes. All right, he said finally. We leave at dawn. But Arya? His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing her skin with devastating gentleness. When we get there, the council will test you, push you, try to break you to prove you're unworthy. Promise me, you'll fight back. She thought of Marcus's ultimatum. Of choosing herself over his expectations. Of 6 years building a life on her own terms. I've been fighting my whole life, she said. Why stop now? His smile was beautiful and terrible. That's my mate. Outside, the Highguard began preparations for the journey to Moonshadow Court. Inside, Arya Winters packed a bag for a world she didn't understand, to face a council that didn't want her, beside a king she was falling for despite every logical reason not to. 72 hours until her life changed forever. The countdown had accelerated. Moonshadow Court rose from the northern wilderness, like something from a fever dream, part fortress, part palace, all impossibility. Stone towers that shouldn't support their own weight. Walls that shimmered with protective wards. Arya couldn't quite see, but definitely felt, and everywhere the silver wolf insignia that marked this as Callahan's domain. The convoy of motorcycles and SUVs pulled through gates that opened without anyone touching them, and Arya felt the weight of hundreds of eyes watching from windows, from battlements, from shadows. They're evaluating you, Saskia murmured from the driver's seat. Wondering if you're worth their king's devotion. Comforting, Arya muttered. The vehicle stopped in a courtyard large enough to host armies. Callahan exited first, immediately surrounded by wolves, who bowed and greeted him with a respect that bordered on reverence. He moved through them with practiced ease, Alpha King in his element, until he reached Arya's door and opened it himself. Welcome to my home, he said, offering his hand. She took it, stepped out, and felt every conversation in the courtyard stop. She's so small, someone whispered. Human, completely human. What was the king thinking? Arya straightened her spine and lifted her chin. She'd faced hostile hospital boards and territorial surgeons. She could handle judgmental werewolves. A woman approached older, with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. Her bearing screamed authority. Your Majesty. Welcome home. I trust your injuries have healed? Completely, thanks to Dr. Winters. Callahan kept Arya's hand firmly in his. Arya, this is Morgana Nightshade, head of the council and my late father's chief advisor. Dr. Winters. Morgana's smile didn't reach her eyes. How unexpected. I trust you understand the gravity of appearing before the council. I understand you don't believe I'm Callahan's mate and need convincing, Arya said bluntly. So, let's skip the pleasantries and get to the part where you test me. Morgana's expression flickered surprise, maybe even respect. Direct. I appreciate that. Very well, Dr. Winters. The council convenes in 1 hour. I suggest you prepare yourself. She swept away, taking half the courtyard with her. She hates me, Arya observed. She hates change. Callahan corrected. And you represent the biggest change this court has seen in centuries. Come on, I'll show you to your rooms. Rooms, plural? You're an unmated female in a court full of dominant wolves. Protocol demands separate quarters until the bond is formalized. His jaw tightened. I don't like it, but I won't disrespect you by ignoring your autonomy. The rooms he showed her to were stunning, all stone and silver, with windows overlooking forests that stretched to the horizon. A massive bed, a bathroom with a tub large enough to swim in, and a walk-in closet already filled with clothes in exactly her size. How? She started. Celestine. She has a gift for knowing what people need before they do. Callahan lingered in the doorway like he wanted to come in, but wouldn't without invitation. The council meeting will be formal. Interrogatory. They'll ask invasive questions about the mate bond, about your intentions, about your worthiness. And if I fail their test? His expression darkened. You won't fail. But if they try to reject you, I'll burn this court to the ground before I let them take you from me. The declaration should have been frightening. Instead, it made something warm unfurl in Arya's chest. Don't burn anything yet, she said. Let me face them first. I've dealt with worse than territorial werewolves. Have you? He moved closer, his presence overwhelming the space between them. Because from where I'm standing, you're about to walk into a room full of predators who'll do everything they can to prove you don't belong. And you're doing it alone without protection because I can't defend you in there without making you look weak. Then I'll defend myself. She met his gold eyes steadily. I didn't come here to hide behind you, Callahan. I came here to prove I can stand beside you. He looked at her like she'd just solved every problem he'd ever had. How are you real? Before she could answer, he closed the distance and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and hungry and terrifying in its intensity. The mate bond flared between them, electric and overwhelming, and for a moment Arya forgot how to breathe, forgot how to think, forgot everything except the feeling of his mouth on hers, and his hands in her hair, and the absolute rightness of it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Callahan pressed his forehead to hers. 3 months, he said roughly. You asked for 3 months, and I'll give them to you. But Arya? I already know my answer. I've known since I woke up in your clinic and you looked at me like I was just another patient who needed saving. You're it for me, the only one. Whether you accept the bond or not, that won't change. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in rooms that were beautiful and foreign and nothing like the small apartment above her clinic. Leaving her with 1 hour to prepare for a council that wanted her to fail. Arya looked at herself in the mirror, dark hair tangled from Callahan's hands, lips swollen from his kiss, eyes wide with fear and determination in equal measure. You've got this, she told her reflection. You're a trauma surgeon. You've held beating hearts in your hands. You can handle one interrogation from some werewolf bureaucrats. The pep talk would have been more effective if her hands weren't shaking. Exactly 1 hour later, Saskia arrived to escort her to the council chambers. One piece of advice, the High Guard said as they walked through corridors lined with portraits of past kings. Don't show fear. The council respects strength above all else. Any weakness, any hesitation, they'll exploit it. Noted. The council chamber was circular, with 12 seats arranged in a semicircle around a central platform. 11 seats were occupied. The 12th directly opposite the others stood empty. Callahan's seat. He stood beside it, gold eyes tracking Arya as she was led to the center platform. Alone, exposed, judged by 12 pairs of supernatural eyes. Morgana Nightshade stood. Dr. Arya Winters. You stand before the Council of Moonshadow Court accused of claiming false mate bond status with our king. How do you plead? Accused? Arya's voice echoed in the chamber. I haven't claimed anything. Your king claimed me. Murmurs rippled through the council. Regardless, Morgana continued, the burden of proof falls to you. Convince us that you are truly Callahan Silvercrest's mate, or face rejection from this court and loss of all protection such status provides. How, exactly, am I supposed to prove a supernatural bond I barely understand? Arya demanded. A thin man with wire-rimmed glasses spoke up. The mate bond manifests physically. Scent recognition, inability to tolerate separation, protective instincts that override reason. His Majesty displays all these signs. You, however. He sniffed disdainfully. You appear remarkably unaffected. Because I'm human? Arya shot back. I don't have Supernatural senses. I can't smell emotions, or feel pack bonds, or whatever you people do, but that doesn't make the connection any less real. Prove it, another council member demanded. If you're truly his mate, you should feel something. Fear of losing him, desperate need for his presence, willingness to die for him. I stabbed a rogue werewolf with a scalpel to protect him, Arya said flatly. Is that proof enough? That's survival instinct, not mate bond devotion. Arya's temper, carefully controlled until now, snapped. You know what? You're right. I don't feel some overwhelming magical compulsion. I don't dream about him every night or pine dramatically when he's away. I'm a doctor, not a romance novel protagonist. But here's what I do feel. Respected. Seen. Valued for who I am, not who you think I should be. Callahan doesn't want me to be anything other than myself. Can any of you say the same about your mates? Silence. Sharp. Uncomfortable silence. Then Celestine spoke from her seat, her silver eyes gleaming. The bond is real. I've seen it. Threads of fate binding them tighter with each passing day. But the council isn't wrong to question. Doctor, Winters hasn't accepted the bond. She's given herself 3 months to decide. And an incomplete mate bond is a vulnerability our enemies will exploit. Then we demand she accept or reject the bond now, Morgana declared. No more delays. The court cannot operate in this state of uncertainty. No. Callahan's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. You don't get to demand anything from her. She's not your subject. She's your future queen, whether you like it or not. And I've given her 3 months to make her choice without pressure. That stands. Your Majesty, Morgana said carefully. With all respect, you're thinking with your heart, not your head. This human has a name. Arya interrupted. And is standing right here. If you have something to say about me, say it to my face. Morgana's eyes narrowed. Very well. You're a liability. Weak, human, unprepared for the dangers of our world. Your presence puts the king at risk, distracts him from his duties, and threatens the stability of this court. The kindest thing you could do is reject the bond and disappear back to your mountain clinic before someone gets hurt. The words landed like physical blows. Every fear Arya had been suppressing crystallized in that moment. She wasn't enough. Wasn't strong enough. Supernatural enough. Worthy enough. The same voice that had whispered in her head when Marcus delivered his ultimatum, when she'd chosen her career and watched him walk away, when she'd convinced herself that being alone was better than being inadequate. But then she looked at Callahan, saw the absolute faith in his gold eyes, the certainty that she could handle this, and something in her broke, or maybe healed. Hard to tell the difference. You're right, she said quietly. Every council member leaned forward. I am weak, human, unprepared. I have no supernatural abilities, no pack bonds, no magic running through my veins. I'm everything you say I am, Morgana smiled triumphantly. But here's what you're wrong about, Arya continued, her voice gaining strength. I'm also a surgeon who's held beating hearts in her hands. A doctor who saved lives you people would consider lost causes. I've worked 72-hour shifts, made life and death decisions in seconds, and carried the weight of other people's survival on my shoulders for years. I know pressure. I know responsibility. I know what it means to be the only thing standing between someone and death. She looked at each council member in turn. You want me to prove I'm worthy? Fine. Give me your hardest test. Your most impossible challenge. Because I've spent my entire life proving I belong in rooms that didn't want me. This is just one more. The silence that followed was different, evaluating, considering. Then a woman in the back spoke, young, with scars crossing her face. I like her, she's got spine. Spine isn't enough, Morgana countered. No, Callahan said, his voice resonating with alpha command. But it's a start. The council will accept my mate. Not today, maybe, but you will. Because she's not going anywhere, and neither am I. He descended from his platform and walked to Arya, offering his hand. She took it, felt the mate bond thrumming between them. Warm and right and terrifying. "This meeting is adjourned," Callahan declared. "We'll reconvene when the council remembers that I'm the king, and my personal life is none of your damn business." He led Arya from the chamber, leaving chaos in their wake. Outside, in the corridor lined with portraits of his ancestors, Callahan stopped and pulled her into his arms. "You were magnificent," he murmured into her hair. "I was terrified," she admitted. "Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. But you didn't run. You stood there and faced them down like you were born to do it." He pulled back to look at her. "Arya, you don't have to prove anything to me. You already have. The question is, what do you need to prove to yourself?" She thought about that. About Marcus and Denver, and 6 years of hiding in the mountains. About choosing herself over expectations. About maybe, finally, choosing herself and someone else. "I need time," she said, "like you promised. 3 months to figure out if this bond is real, or just fate trying to make decisions for us. 3 months to learn your world without drowning in it. 3 months to see if I can be your mate without losing myself. Then you'll have it," he promised. "No more council demands. No more pressure. Just us." But even as he said it, Arya saw Celestine watching from the shadows, her silver eyes knowing. 3 months felt like both forever, and nowhere near enough time. The attack came 3 weeks later, in the dead of night. When Arya had finally started to believe maybe, just maybe, she could belong here. She'd spent those weeks learning the court's rhythms, training with Saskia in basic self-defense, sitting in on pack meetings she barely understood, and spending stolen hours with Callahan that felt like the beginning of something real. Not just the mate bond pulling them together, but genuine connection. Shared laughter, comfortable silences, the terrifying vulnerability of letting someone see you completely. She was dreaming of mountain snow and silver wolves when the explosion shattered her windows. Arya hit the floor on instinct, glass raining around her, her medical training automatically cataloging injuries, minor cuts, possible concussion if she'd hit her head, ringing in her ears that suggested temporary hearing damage. The door burst open. Saskia, in half-shifted form, all claws and fury. Rogues, 50, maybe more, they breached the outer defenses. "We need to move you to the safe room now." "Callahan is already fighting. Come on." They ran through corridors filled with screaming and smoke and the sounds of combat. Arya caught glimpses of the battle wolves tearing into each other, blood painting stone walls, highguards fighting with lethal precision. Then she saw him, Callahan in full wolf form, massive and terrible, fighting 3 rogues simultaneously. He was magnificent and monstrous in equal measure, all raw power and alpha dominance. And he was losing, not in skill, but in numbers. For every rogue he defeated, 2 more took its place. They were coordinated, strategic, focusing their attacks on the king while avoiding his high guard. "They're trying to separate him," Arya realized. "Draw him away from protection." "Standard rogue tactics," Saskia confirmed, pulling her toward the safe room's reinforced door. "But the king can handle," Callahan went down. A massive gray rogue, a different one, but equally scarred, had his jaws locked around Callahan's throat. Not biting down, yet, but the threat was clear. Every highguard froze. "Stand down," the rogue growled, his voice carrying supernatural command. "Or, I kill your king." The fighting stopped. 50 rogues surrounded 20 highguards in a courtyard painted with blood and silver moonlight. A perfect checkmate. "What do you want?" Morgana demanded, appearing from a doorway with council members flanking her. "What we've always wanted. Freedom. The old ways restored. And the human who dared claim mate bond status with our king." The rogue's eyes found Arya. "Give us the girl, and we'll leave. Keep her, and we'll tear this court apart, starting with his throat." Arya felt every eye turn to her, saw the calculation in Morgana's expression. the desperation in the High Guard's faces. The impossible choice laid bare, her life for the courts, for Callahan's. "Don't," Callahan growled, his voice strained but absolute. "Arya, don't you dare." But she was already moving, pulling away from Saskia's grip, walking toward the standoff with hands raised. "I'll go," she said clearly. "Let him live, and I'll come willingly." "No." Callahan surged against the rogue's hold, but teeth bit down, drawing blood. He went still, gold eyes blazing with fury and terror. "Smart girl," the rogue said. "Walk forward slowly. No tricks, no." Arya lunged for a fallen Highguard's weapon, not a gun, but something like a taser modified for supernatural biology. She'd watched Saskia use them in training. Watched how they overloaded a werewolf's nervous system for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds. She fired point blank at the rogue. It convulsed, jaws releasing Callahan, who immediately tore free, and everything happened at once. Callahan shifted mid-leap, his massive wolf form becoming something else, something that belonged in nightmares and ancient myths. Larger, more powerful, wreathed in silver fire that burned without heat. His true alpha form. The first time Arya had seen it unleashed, without restraint. He tore through rogues like they were paper, each strike precise and devastating. The Highguard rallied around him, turning defense into offense. Within minutes, the 50 rogues were either dead, fleeing, or begging for mercy. But Arya didn't see most of it. Because the rogue, in its death throes, had lashed out. Claws had connected with her abdomen, tearing through flesh with terrifying ease. She looked down to see blood, so much blood pouring from wounds that no amount of pressure would stop. "Oh," she said faintly. "That's not good." Then she was falling. And Callahan was there. Shifted back to human form, catching her before she hit the ground. "No, no, no," he chanted, his hands frantically trying to stop the bleeding. "Arya, stay with me. Medic. I need a medic now." "Funny," she murmured, shock making her thoughts fuzzy. "I'm usually the one saying that." "Don't joke. Don't you dare joke right now." His voice broke. "You're going to be fine. You hear? Me? You're going to be fine because I just found you and I'm not losing you. I won't. I can't." "Callahan." She reached up with blood-slicked hands to touch his face. "Listen to me. The wounds are too deep. I know anatomy. I know what's been hit, even with your healers." "No." Tears tracked through the blood on his face. "There has to be something. There has to be." "The mate bond." Celestine's voice cut through the chaos. She appeared beside them, silver eyes blazing with urgency. "A full mating can transfer supernatural healing. If you mark her now, if she accepts the bond completely, your alpha blood might save her." "She hasn't decided," Callahan said desperately. "She needs 3 months, I promised." "She has 3 minutes," Celestine interrupted brutally. "Mark her now or lose her forever. Those are your options." Arya felt consciousness slipping, felt her surgeon's mind cataloging the stages of blood loss with detached precision. Stage 3, hemorrhagic shock. Maybe 4 minutes, not hours. "Do it," she whispered. "Arya. Do it. I accept. The bond, the bite, all of it. I choose you. I've been choosing you since you collapsed in my parking lot. I was just too scared to admit it." She smiled despite the pain. "Guess I'm out of time for fear." Callahan looked at her with so much love and anguish, it hurt worse than the wounds. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Once I mark you, there's no going back. You'll be bound to me, to this world, forever. No more human life, no more." "I'm sure." And she was. Dying had a way of clarifying things. "I love you. I don't need 3 months to know that. I needed 3 minutes of possibly losing you to understand I'd rather have one day as your mate than a lifetime of what-ifs." He kissed her then, gentle, despite the urgency, tasting like salt and blood and promises. Then he bit down. His teeth sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder, the traditional mating mark. Not deep enough to kill, but enough to break skin, to mix their blood, to activate the supernatural bond that had been waiting for this moment. Fire exploded through Arya's veins. Not painful, but intense. Overwhelming. She felt Callahan's alpha power pouring into her, his wolf recognizing hers, except she didn't have a wolf. She had nothing but humanity and determination. And oh God, it was too much. It was burning her from inside out, remaking every cell, every molecule, every something shifted. Deep in her DNA, in places science hadn't mapped and magic didn't reach, something ancient woke up. Not wolf, but not purely human either. Something in between. Something new. Her wounds began to close. Not with supernatural speed, but faster than human normal. Faster than should be possible. It's working, Celestine breathed. The bond is taking. She's surviving the transformation. Arya gasped as the fire receded, leaving behind something that thrummed with power. She could feel Callahan now, really feel him. His emotions, his presence, his absolute certainty that she was his and he was hers. The mate bond, complete and unbreakable. Welcome back, Callahan murmured against her hair, holding her like she might disappear. Welcome to what? Her voice was rough. What am I now? Something unprecedented, Celestine said, kneeling beside them. A human who accepted an alpha's mate mark and survived. You're not wolf, you'll never shift, never have our strength, but you're not fully human anymore either. You're bonded, connected to the alpha through ties that will last your lifetime. His power will protect you, his pack will recognize you as queen. And you'll heal faster, live longer, sense things humans can't. So I'm a hybrid? You're unique, Callahan corrected. You're mine, and you're alive, which is all that matters. Around them, the courtyard was silent. Highguards and council members alike stared at Arya, with expressions ranging from awe, to terror, to respect. Morgana approached slowly, her icy demeanor fractured. You sacrificed yourself for the king, faced certain death to save him. She actually knelt before Arya. I was wrong about you, Dr. Winters. You are exactly the queen this court needs. Others followed. One by one, the council and Highguard knelt before their human, but not quite human anymore, queen. Arya, still bleeding and exhausted and processing her new supernatural reality, looked at Callahan. So, I guess the 3 months is over? He laughed, the sound breaking with relief. I guess it is. No regrets? She thought about her clinic, her carefully built isolation, her determination to never let someone else define her worth. Then she felt the mate bond humming between them, solid and true and chosen despite impossible odds. No regrets, she said, though I'm definitely going to need therapy, supernatural therapy. Does that exist? We'll figure it out, he promised. Together. As the sun rose over Moonshadow Court, painting the blood-stained courtyard in gold and silver, a human doctor who'd saved a wolf's life found herself irrevocably bound to a king who'd waited 10 years to find her. The choice had been made, the bond completed. Everything else would just have to catch up. The aftermath of battle and bonding was bureaucratic chaos wrapped in supernatural politics with a side of medical crisis. Arya spent 3 days in the court's healing wing, not because her wounds were life-threatening anymore, but because every supernatural doctor wanted to study the unprecedented human-turned-mate-bonded hybrid. She was poked, prodded, scanned with equipment that shouldn't exist, and asked endless questions about what she felt, sensed, experienced. It's like having an extra sense, she tried to explain to a healer documenting her case. I can feel Callahan's presence even when he's not in the room, sense his emotions like their weather patterns, and sometimes I hear things I shouldn't. Conversations 3 rooms away, heartbeats from down the hall. Enhanced senses without the full werewolf transformation, the healer murmured, scribbling notes. Fascinating. Your human physiology is adapting to alpha blood in ways we've never documented. Callahan visited between council meetings, sitting by her bedside with dark circles under his gold eyes and hands that constantly sought contact holding hers, brushing her hair back, reassuring himself she was real and alive in his. You look terrible, Arya told him on day 2. You almost died 3 days ago. I'm allowed to look terrible. But he smiled, and something in her chest unclenched. On day 4, they let her out of the healing wing on the condition she reported any unusual symptoms immediately. Arya agreed, then promptly ignored half the restrictions to attend her first official council meeting as acknowledged mate. The council chamber felt different this time, less hostile, still evaluating, but with something approaching respect. Morgana stood as Arya entered, and everyone else followed suit. Your Majesty, the head council member said, using the title naturally now. Welcome. We have much to discuss. About the rogue attack? Arya asked, taking the seat beside Callahan's throne that had been empty for centuries. That, and its implications. The rogues knew our defenses, our routines, our weaknesses. Someone inside the court fed them information. Morgana's expression was glacial. We have a traitor. The word hung in the air like poison. Who? Callahan demanded, his alpha command making windows rattle. We're still investigating, but evidence points to someone high-ranking, someone with access to security protocols and the king's personal schedule. Morgana hesitated. There's more. One of the rogue leaders survived. We have him in custody. He's offered to trade information about the traitor for leniency. No deals, Callahan started. Wait. Arya leaned forward, her tactical mind, sharpened by years of hospital politics, already working. What information? How credible? Morgana looked surprised by the question, then thoughtful. He claims the traitor is working with a larger organization. That the attack on Moonshadow Court was only the beginning of a coordinated effort to destabilize werewolf leadership across North America. A coup, one of the younger council members said. Pack wars on a continental scale. Arya felt Callahan's rage through the mate bond, a living thing that wanted to tear and burn and destroy. She touched his hand, grounding him. Then we need that information, she said calmly. Not a deal, exactly. But leverage. What does he want beyond leniency? Protection. He claims if he talks, the organization will send assassins. Morgana's jaw tightened. He wants sanctuary, witness protection, werewolf style. Absolutely not, Morgana said. He's responsible for 3 Highguard deaths and he has information that could prevent hundreds more, Arya interrupted. I'm not saying forgive him, but if he can identify the traitor and expose this organization, isn't that worth keeping him alive? The council members exchanged glances. This was new territory, a human queen participating in supernatural politics, offering strategic input. It's not traditional, one elder ventured. Nothing about this situation is traditional, Arya countered. But I spent 6 years in a hospital where politics killed more patients than disease. I know how to spot patterns, how to read power plays. This organization? They're probing for weakness. The rogue attack wasn't meant to kill Callahan. They could have sent more forces for that. It was meant to test response times, defensive capabilities, internal cohesion. She stood, moving to the tactical map on the chamber wall. They're gathering intelligence for a larger assault, which means we need to move first. Use the rogue's information to identify the traitor, then feed false intelligence back through their network. Make them think we're weaker than we are. Draw them into a trap. Silence. Every council member staring at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. That's actually brilliant, Saskia said from her guard position. Classic counterintelligence strategy. Callahan looked at Arya with an expression that made the mate bond pulse with warmth. You've been here 4 days and you're already restructuring our defense strategy. Is that a problem? She asked. No. His smile was fierce with pride. It's perfect. The council will implement Dr. Winter's suggestion. Morgana, arrange the rogue's transfer to secure holding. Saskia, assemble a team to begin counterintelligence operations. The rest of you, start reviewing anyone with high-level security access. I want names by tomorrow. As the meeting adjourned and council members filed out, many stopped to nod at Arya with something approaching approval. Even Morgana paused. "Your Majesty," she said to Arya specifically. "Perhaps I underestimated what humanity could bring to our court. Strategic thinking unclouded by pack politics or supernatural bias. It's refreshing." After she left, Callahan pulled Arya close, his breath warm against her temple. "You're incredible. You know that? I'm just applying hospital administration skills to supernatural problems. Same politics, higher stakes, more fur." But she leaned into him, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming. "Callahan? I need to go back to Pinecrest. Soon. Check on my patients, make sure the town's okay, pack up my things if I'm really staying here permanently." He stiffened. "You want to leave?" "I want to transition," she corrected. "I left without saying goodbye. Left Jamie without a job. Mrs. Chen without her doctor. An entire town thinking I abandoned them. I need closure. They need to see I'm okay." Through the mate bond, she felt his fear that if she went back, she realized this supernatural life wasn't worth it, that she'd choose her old safe existence over the chaos he represented. "I'm not running," she promised. "But I need to close that chapter properly. Can you understand that?" He nodded slowly. "I'll come with you. High guard escort. Full security. We'll make it safe. Callahan? Non-negotiable. You're my mate, my queen. Every rogue in North America now knows exactly what you look like and where you used to live. I'm not letting you go back unprotected." She wanted to argue, to prove she could handle it alone. But the mate bond whispered that this wasn't about trust. It was about love. About him needing to know she was safe the same way she'd needed to save him from bleeding out in her parking lot. "Okay," she agreed. "But we're taking my car." I refuse to show up in Pinecrest on a motorcycle convoy like some kind of werewolf biker gang. He laughed, and it felt like sunlight after storm. "Deal." 2 days later, Arya stood in her old clinic for the first time in almost a month. It looked exactly the same: outdated equipment, chipped paint, the faint smell of antiseptic, but also completely different, smaller, confining, like a memory of who she used to be. Mrs. Chen was her first visitor, arriving with a casserole and suspicion in equal measure. "Dr. Winters, you're alive. And you brought friends." She eyed the two high guards standing outside like they were exotic and possibly dangerous zoo animals. "I'm alive," Arya confirmed. "And I owe you all an apology. I left without explaining, without making arrangements for your medical care. That was unprofessional. You left to save us, Mrs. Chen corrected, surprising her. "That young man of yours, the king he came by after you disappeared, explained you were protecting the town by leaving. Set up a new doctor too, Dr. Martinez. He's good. Not you, but good." Relief flooded through Arya. "I'm glad. I was worried. That we'd be angry? We were. But then we thought about how you spent 6 years taking care of us, never complaining, always there when we needed you. Figured you'd earned one emergency of your own." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "You look different." "I feel different." Arya touched the mate mark on her neck, still healing. "A lot has changed." "Are you happy?" The question caught her off guard. Was she happy? Her life had been upended, her humanity fundamentally altered, her quiet mountain existence replaced with supernatural politics and pack wars, and a mate bond that terrified her as much as it fulfilled her. But when she thought of Callahan, of the court, of finding a place where her strategic mind and medical skills mattered in new ways. "Yes," she said, surprised by how true it was. "I'm happy." Mrs. Chen nodded like this confirmed something. "Then we're happy for you, even if you did run off with a werewolf king. We'll expect wedding invitations." Arya laughed until tears pricked her eyes. "I'll see what I can do." The rest of the day was a blur of similar encounters. Former patients wishing her well. Jamie apologizing for quitting. I panicked. Werewolves. The Hendersons bringing flowers and awkward congratulations. By sunset, Arya had said her goodbyes, packed her essential belongings, and stood in the empty clinic one last time. "Ready?" Callahan asked from the doorway, his presence comforting and solid. "Almost." She did one final walkthrough, touching examination tables where she'd saved lives, looking at diplomas on walls that documented her old achievements. "I need to let her go. The person I was here, the doctor who thought hiding in the mountains was the same as healing." "And who are you now?" "Still figuring that out, but I think someone braver, someone who stopped running." She turned to face him. Someone who chose love over safety and found out they could be the same thing. He crossed the room and kissed her, gentle and reverent. "For the record, I'd have loved you as that mountain doctor too, but I'm grateful I get to meet this version. Even though she's terrible at supernatural politics and keeps accidentally challenging council members, especially because of that." They locked the clinic doors behind them. Arya didn't look back. Forward was a court that was learning to accept her, a mate who loved her for exactly who she was, a supernatural world that terrified and fascinated her in equal measure, and somewhere in the shadows an organization planning to tear it all down. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, she drove away from her old life with a werewolf king in the passenger seat and bodyguards following at a respectful distance, heading toward a future she was finally ready to claim. The countdown was over, the choice made, the bond complete. Everything else was just beginning. The traitor was revealed in the worst possible way. During Arya's official coronation as queen, she'd spent 3 weeks preparing for the ceremony, learning protocols, practicing speeches, being fitted for a gown that somehow looked regal, without making her feel like she was playing dress-up. The entire werewolf community had been invited, alphas from every major pack in North America, along with representatives from other supernatural factions. A display of unity and strength. A message that Moonshadow Court stood unshakable, except it was all falling apart in real time. Arya stood on the dais in the grand hall, wearing silver silk and Callahan's mother's crown, while 200 supernatural beings watched one of the council's most trusted members, Elder Thomas Blackwood, be dragged forward in silver chains. The evidence was damning. Encrypted communications with the rogue organization. Payment records showing bribes. Most damning of all, a detailed plan to assassinate Callahan during the coronation ceremony and blame it on rival packs, throwing the werewolf world into chaos. "Thomas," Callahan said, his voice carrying the weight of personal betrayal. "You served my father for 40 years. Why?" Blackwood looked up, his face gaunt but defiant. "Because your father understood tradition, power, the old ways that kept our kind strong. And then you became king and started changing everything, softening, talking about alliances and peace." His eyes cut to Arya with pure venom. "And now you've taken a human mate. Made her queen. You're destroying everything we are." "I'm evolving what we are," Callahan corrected. "Moving us forward instead of clinging to a past that no longer serves us. By putting an abomination on the throne?" Blackwood spat. "She'll birth no heirs. She can't even shift. What kind of queen?" "The kind," Arya interrupted, her voice steady despite rage trembling through the mate bond. "Who saw the trap you set during my medical evaluation, the poison you had the healers introduce to my treatment, hoping my hybrid physiology would react fatally?" Gasps rippled through the hall. Callahan's eyes went molten gold. "You tried to kill her?" His voice dropped to something subterranean and terrible. "I tried to save our court from a mistake," Blackwood said, unrepentant. "A human queen will destroy us. The organization I contacted would have restored proper order. They would have—" He never finished. Callahan moved faster than thought, his hand closing around Blackwood's throat. "You tried to kill my mate?" he growled, and the alpha command in his voice brought every wolf in the hall to their knees. Even Arya felt the compulsion, though the mate bond shielded her from the worst of it. "Give me one reason not to end you right now." Through the mate bond, Arya felt Callahan's fury. His wolf demanding blood, justice, vengeance. It would be so easy to let him kill Blackwood, so satisfying. But then they'd be no better than the organization they were fighting. Callahan. She touched his arm, and he froze. Don't. Not like this. Not in rage? He tried to kill you, Callahan said, his voice breaking. He poisoned you, planned your death. I know, and I'm furious too. But this? She gestured at Blackwood, at the hall full of witnesses. This is exactly what they want. For you to lose control, to look like a tyrant, to prove their propaganda that you're unfit to rule. She stepped forward, addressing the gathered alphas and council members. Elder Blackwood betrayed this court because he feared change, because he couldn't imagine a future different from the past. But that fear doesn't excuse attempted murder. It doesn't excuse treason. He'll face justice, real justice, through proper channels, and everyone will see that Moonshadow Court operates by law, not vengeance. Morgana stepped forward, her expression conflicted. Your Majesty is correct. The punishment for treason is exile. Blackwood will be stripped of rank, marked as rogue, and cast out. No pack will shelter him. He'll die alone. Worse than death, someone murmured. For a werewolf, being cut off from pack bonds was psychological torture. Arya felt a flicker of pity despite everything. There's more, Saskia announced, approaching with documents. We've traced Blackwood's communications, the organization behind the rogues, behind the attacks they call themselves the Purists. Their goal is to eliminate all non-wolf supernatural influence from werewolf society, mixed species relationships, alliances with other factions, any evolution beyond traditional pack structure. How many members? Callahan demanded. Unknown, but they have cells in at least 20 packs. And they're preparing something big. Multiple coordinated attacks designed to destabilize werewolf leadership and install their own chosen alphas. Arya's strategic mind was already working. When? Within the next month. The coronation was supposed to be their opening move. The hall erupted in discussion. Alphas conferring with their advisors, council members arguing protocol. Chaos barely controlled. Arya looked at Callahan and saw her own fear reflected back. They'd stopped one attack, but a war was coming. Then we prepare, she said loudly, cutting through the noise. Every eye turned to her. The Purists want to isolate us, turn us against each other, prove that change is weakness. So we do the opposite. We reach out to every pack, every supernatural faction willing to stand against extremism. We build alliances so strong that attacking one means attacking all. A unified front, Celestine murmured, her silver eyes distant with vision. I see it, different species, different packs, standing together against the fire. It's unprecedented. Good, Arya said. Unprecedented seems to be my specialty. Callahan smiled despite the tension. Alphas of North America, he addressed the hall, his command making the words reverberate. You came here to witness a coronation. Instead, you've witnessed betrayal and revelation of a threat that endangers us all. The question before you now is simple. Do we face this threat divided, as individual packs fighting for survival? Or do we stand together? Silence, loaded with centuries of pack rivalries and territorial disputes. Then a woman stepped forward, Alpha Valeria, Stormborn of the Northern Territories, known for her fierce independence. I'll stand with Moonshadow Court. Not because I agree with everything you're doing, Callahan, but because the Purists are a cancer. We cut them out, or they kill us all. One by one, other alphas added their support. Not all, some left immediately, unwilling to join what they saw as a doomed alliance. But enough stayed, enough to make a difference. As the hall slowly emptied, Arya stood beside Callahan on the dais that was supposed to host her triumph and instead had become a war council. Well, she said wryly, that wasn't exactly the coronation I imagined. No? He pulled her close, careful of the crown still perched on her head. What did you imagine? Less attempted assassination, more cake. But she leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. Callahan, what if we can't stop them? What if the Purists win? Then we'll have failed together. But Arya? He tilted her chin up, his gold eyes fierce. We're not going to fail, because they're fighting for a past that never really existed. We're fighting for a future that's actually possible. Hope always beats nostalgia. That's surprisingly optimistic for a werewolf king. I have a surprisingly optimistic human queen. He kissed her, gentle despite the chaos surrounding them. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. That's what the mate bond means. Not just love, but partnership, equals. Through the mate bond, Arya felt his absolute certainty. His unshakable belief that together they could handle anything. And maybe, just maybe, he was right. So, she said, stepping back and adjusting her crown. I guess we should probably finish this coronation at some point. I'm already wearing the outfit. Callahan laughed, the sound filling the emptying hall with warmth. Your Majesty, are you suggesting we proceed with a formal ceremony after everything that just happened? I'm suggesting that the purists wanted to stop this coronation because it symbolizes everything they hate: change, unity, hope. So yes, let's absolutely finish it. Let's make it loud and proud and impossible to ignore. His smile was brilliant. I love you. I love you too. Now let's go be insufferably optimistic rulers and make some extremists very angry. They reconvened the ceremony an hour later with the remaining alphas and court members. It was smaller, more intimate than planned, but somehow more meaningful. When Morgana placed the formal crown on Arya's head and declared her Queen of Moonshadow Court, the wolves who remained howled their approval. The sound echoed through the mountains, a declaration of alliance and defiance. In the shadows beyond the court, members of the Purists heard that howl and knew their opening gambit had failed. But the war was far from over. It was only just beginning. The unified front held for exactly 2 weeks before the first cracks appeared. Alpha Marcus Ironjaw of the Eastern Seaboard Pack was found dead in his home, throat torn out by what appeared to be rogue wolves. His second-in-command immediately blamed Moonshadow Court for insufficient protection and withdrew from the alliance. 3 days later, a fire destroyed a neutral meeting ground where different packs had been negotiating terms. No casualties, but the message was clear: nowhere was safe. The Purists were moving. Fast, coordinated, brutal. Arya stood in the war room, formerly a library, now covered in maps and tactical displays, watching red markers multiply across North America. Each one represented an attack, a defection, a pack choosing isolation over cooperation. We're losing ground, Morgana said grimly. For every pack that joins us, 2 pull back. The Purists are creating fear faster than we can build trust. Then we need to cut off the head, Saskia suggested. Find their leadership and eliminate them. If they have centralized leadership? Callahan countered. Everything we've learned suggests a decentralized cell structure. Taking out one cell just activates others. Arya studied the attack patterns, her medical training helping her see what others missed. The attacks weren't random. They formed clusters, radiating from specific geographic points. There, she pointed to 3 locations on the map. Portland, Denver, and Atlanta. These are coordination hubs. Every attack traces back through one of these cities. Celestine appeared in the doorway, her silver eyes wild. The vision is clearer now. Fire consuming the courts, alphas turning on each other, and at the center, she focused on Arya. You're the catalyst for everything. The Purists won't stop until you're dead because your very existence disproves their ideology. Comforting, Arya muttered. But there's more. Celestine moved to the map, her finger hovering over Portland. I see a gathering, Purist leadership meeting in secret. 3 days from now, they'll be vulnerable, exposed. If we strike, then... It could be a trap, Morgana interrupted. Seers can be manipulated. They might want us to see this. Or it's our best chance, Callahan said. Arya's right about the coordination hubs. If we can disrupt even one, we might buy time to fortify the alliance. We? Arya asked sharply. Please tell me you're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting. His expression confirmed her fears. I have to go. Show strength. Lead from the front. And walk directly into what might be a trap specifically designed to kill you? I'll have high guards. Backup from allied packs. Every precaution. Except the one where you don't put yourself in needless danger. Arya's voice rose with fear disguised as anger. Through the mate bond, she felt his determination warring with his need to keep her safe. You're not expendable, Callahan. If the purists kill you, everything falls apart. If I don't take this risk, everything falls apart anyway. We're losing. Arya, we need a win. She wanted to argue, to forbid him through some kind of queen authority she absolutely didn't have. But she saw the trap. If she tried to control him, she'd become exactly what she'd feared becoming. Someone who lost herself in the relationship. Fine, she said, voice tight. But I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Not negotiable. You said we're partners, equals. You don't get to protect me by excluding me from strategy. She crossed her arms. Besides, I have advantages none of your wolves do. I think differently. See patterns others miss. You need me. I need you alive. And I need you to trust me. The mate bond flared between them, carrying the weight of every fear they'd been suppressing. Callahan, I can't just stand here waiting for you to come home. It'll break me. I'd rather die fighting beside you than spend my life wondering if you're coming back. Silence fell over the war room. Every council member and highguard pretending not to witness the argument. Finally, Saskia spoke. She's right, Your Majesty, about thinking differently. During the rogue interrogation, Dr. Winters noticed behavioral patterns our people missed. Her human perspective is an asset. Traitor, Callahan muttered, but there was no heat in it. Morgana surprised everyone by adding, the Queen Consort has proven herself capable. Perhaps it's time we stopped treating her like delicate human and started treating her like the strategic mind she is. Callahan looked at Arya for a long moment. She felt his fear through the mate bond, his desperate need to wrap her in protection and never let danger near. But she also felt his respect, his understanding that she'd suffocate under that kind of protection. You stay within 10 feet of me at all times, he said finally. You wear full protective gear, and if I say run, you run. No arguments. Deal. She knew when to take the victory. Gods help us all, he murmured. I've mated someone with a death wish. Not a death wish, a life wish. There's a difference. 3 days later, Arya found herself in Portland, wearing body armor designed for supernatural combat, standing with a strike team of 20 highguards in an abandoned warehouse district. The target, a supposedly secret purist leadership meeting happening in the building across the street. This feels like a trap, she whispered to Callahan. Probably, but we're going anyway, because we're either brave or stupid. He squeezed her hand. Stay close. They breached on Saskia's signal, coordinated, professional, overwhelming force meant to capture, not kill. The warehouse was exactly as Celestine had seen, 30 purist members, including several high-ranking coordinators. Too easy, Arya thought. Way too easy. Then the explosions started. Not in their warehouse, but across the city. Coordinated detonations at pack houses, safe houses, anywhere allied wolves had gathered. Dozens of locations going up in flames simultaneously. It's a diversion, Saskia shouted over the comms. They wanted us here, away from our people. Arya's blood ran cold. They'd been played. While Moonshadow's leadership was in Portland, the Purists were destroying their actual power base. Fall back, Callahan commanded. Get to the transports. We need to... The second wave of explosions cut him off. This time, in their building. Charges planted beneath their feet, detonating with precise timing. The floor collapsed. Arya fell through darkness, felt Callahan's hand ripped from hers, heard screaming and crashing and the terrible sound of people dying. She landed hard, concrete and rebar in pain. Her hybrid healing kept bones from shattering, but couldn't prevent the agony. Around her, highguards stirred some healing, some not moving at all. Callahan, She scrambled upright, ignoring her body's protests. Callahan! Here! His voice, rough but alive, somewhere in the smoke and darkness. She stumbled toward it, found him pinned under debris, blood streaming from a head wound. Hold still, she ordered, medical training overriding panic. She assessed quickly concussion, possibly cracked ribs, but alive. Healing already starting. Above them, footsteps. Dozens of them. Purest reinforcements poured into the ruined warehouse. Not to capture, to finish the job. Touching, Blackwood's voice said. Arya looked up to see the exiled elder stepping through the smoke, armed and backed by an army. The human queen trying to save her mate. How noble, how useless. You're supposed to be cast out, Saskia growled from behind overturned equipment. Her leg was clearly broken, but she held a pearl weapon steady. That was the plan. Make you think you'd won, while we prepared the real assault. Blackwood smiled. Every pack house, every safe location you thought was secure, we've known about them for months. Tonight, we burn it all down. Moonshadow Court, your precious alliance. Every wolf who chose change over tradition. By morning, there won't be enough left to matter. Arya felt Callahan trying to shift, to fight, but he was too injured. The other Highguards were struggling, wounded or trapped. They were going to die here, unless... You want me, Arya said, standing slowly. That's what this is really about. You can't handle that a human proved your ideology wrong just by existing. So take me, let the others go, and I'll come quietly. No, Callahan roared, trying to rise despite his injuries. Tempting, Blackwood mused. But no, we'll take you and kill them. Can't leave witnesses to tell the story wrong. He raised his weapon. Time seemed to slow. Arya saw everything with perfect clarity. Blackwood's finger on the trigger, Saskia trying desperately to reach her own weapon, Callahan struggling against debris, the other purists moving into position. They were outgunned, outmanned, outplayed. But Arya Winters hadn't survived medical school, residency, and 6 years of trauma surgery by giving up when things looked impossible. She'd survived by finding solutions no one else saw. You're wrong about one thing, she said clearly. I'm not useless. Then she did something desperate and possibly insane. She triggered the mate bond. Not just feeling Callahan's presence, but opening it completely. No barriers, no protection, just pure connection. His alpha power flooded into her hybrid body, not making her wolf, but amplifying everything she'd become. Enhanced senses exploded into hyper-awareness. Strength multiplied beyond human limits. Healing accelerated to supernatural speed. For 30 seconds, she carried the power of an alpha king in a human frame. It would probably kill her afterward. But 30 seconds was enough. She moved faster than human perception, crossing the warehouse in a blur. Disarmed Blackwood. Took down 3 purists before they could react. Grabbed weapons from fallen Highguards and threw them to trapped allies. The tide turned in heartbeats. Saskia, armed and furious, tore into the purists with vicious efficiency. Other Highguards rallied, their alpha's power flowing through his mate, giving them renewed strength. Even Callahan, freed from debris, shifted despite his wounds. The fight was brutal but brief. Purists who'd come to execute the trapped court found themselves facing supernatural rage, channeled through a human doctor who'd decided 30 seconds of borrowed power was worth the cost. When it was over, Arya collapsed. The mate bond, stressed beyond its limits, fractured like overstretched steel. Pain unlike anything she'd ever experienced flooded through her, every cell screaming, every nerve burning. The price of channeling power she wasn't built to contain. Arya, Callahan was there, cradling her, his own injuries forgotten. No, no, no. What did you do? What were you thinking? Saved us, she gasped. Worth it. It's killing you. The bond is tearing itself apart. I can feel it. Then fix it, Celestine's voice cut through. She appeared beside them, her silver eyes blazing with urgency. The bond broke because she pushed too hard. But you're both still alive. still connected. Pour your power back into her. Rebuild what fractured, now, before it's too late. Callahan didn't hesitate. He bit down on the mate mark again, not to mark her anew, but to reinforce what existed. His alpha power poured into Arya, but controlled this time. Gentle, rebuilding the bond piece by piece. It hurt almost as much as the breaking had, but slowly, agonizingly, the fractures healed. The bond reformed, stronger than before, tempered by strain and survival. When Arya could breathe again, she found herself still cradled in Callahan's arms, surrounded by battered but alive highguards and one very unconscious Blackwood. "We won?" she asked weakly. "You won," Saskia corrected, limping over. "That was the most reckless, brilliant, terrifying thing I've ever seen. Your Majesty, remind me never to underestimate human determination again." Above them, dawn was breaking, and with it came reports flooding in from across the city. The attacks on pack houses had been stopped. Allied wolves, warned by Moonshadow's emergency calls, had evacuated or fortified in time. The purest assault that should have destroyed everything had instead exposed their network completely. Cell members were being rounded up, leadership captured, the coordination hubs compromised. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. "We did it," Arya murmured against Callahan's chest. "You did it," he corrected. "You impossible, reckless, perfect human, who apparently can channel alpha power and survive." "Hybrid," she corrected. "I'm a hybrid now. Part human, part mate-bonded supernatural disaster. My mate, bonded supernatural disaster." "Yours," she agreed, and felt the bond pulse with agreement. Behind them, Saskia was already coordinating cleanup and prisoner transport, her broken leg somehow not slowing her down. Other highguards emerged from the rubble, battered but functional, their supernatural healing working overtime. "Your Majesty," one of them called to Callahan. "We've got Blackwood secured. What are your orders?" Callahan looked at the unconscious traitor, then at Arya. "What do you think?" She blinked, surprised he was asking. "Me? You're the one he tried to kill. Multiple times. You have a say in his fate." Arya thought about vengeance, about justice, about the difference between the two. Exile wasn't enough the first time. But execution makes him a martyr. The purists would use his death as propaganda proof that we're the tyrants they claim we are. So what do you suggest? Public trial. Let every pack see the evidence. Let them hear his own words condemning him. Then permanent imprisonment under maximum security. He lives, but powerless. Forgotten. The opposite of martyrdom. Morgana, who'd arrived with reinforcements, nodded approvingly. "Wise counsel, Your Majesty. The council will support this." As the sun fully rose over Portland's warehouse district, emergency vehicles arrived to handle the human casualties and cover story. Something about a gas leak explosion, mundane and boring and entirely unbelievable, but humans had a remarkable capacity for accepting comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. Arya watched the cleanup with Callahan beside her, his arm around her waist keeping her steady. "We should get you to a healer," he said quietly. "That stunt with the mate Bon Celestine said it could have killed you, but it didn't." She leaned into him. "And it saved everyone. I'd do it, again." "I know. That's what terrifies me." But his voice was warm, proud. "You're going to give me a heart attack before I'm 40. You're a werewolf. Pretty sure you're functionally immortal. Not if my mate keeps doing things that stop my heart." She laughed despite the exhaustion, the pain, the sheer insanity of everything that had just happened. "Fair point. I'll try to be more boring going forward." "Please don't. I fell in love with you exactly as you are, reckless heroism and all." The word settled over her like a warm blanket. Love. Not just the mate bond, not just supernatural destiny, but real, chosen, complicated love. "I love you too," she said. "Even though you dragged me into a supernatural war, and your counsel terrifies me, and I'm pretty sure I'll never fully understand pack politics." "That makes two of us," he admitted. I've been king for 5 years and still don't understand half of what the council argues about. But with you here, it feels manageable. Like maybe I don't have to carry everything alone anymore." They stood together in the wreckage of what should have been a massacre, holding each other while around them the pieces of their world slowly reassembled. Not the same as before, some things had broken too thoroughly for that, but into something new, something stronger. Saskia approached, her leg already in a temporary brace. "Your Majesties, we've received word from the other coordination hubs. Atlanta and Denver Purist cells have been raided simultaneously. We have their leadership in custody, and their networks collapsing. This isn't over, but we've won the battle," Arya finished. "The war will take longer." "Wars always do," Callahan said. "But we'll face it together, all of us." He raised his voice, addressing the assembled High Guards, the allied pack members who'd arrived as backup, everyone who'd fought and bled and survived. "What happened tonight proves something the purists can never accept. We're stronger together than we ever were divided. Human and wolf, different packs, different perspectives, united not by force, but by choice." A howl went up from the gathered wolves, not of mourning, but of triumph, of defiance, of hope. Arya, who still couldn't howl properly, simply squeezed Callahan's hand and felt the mate bond pulse with contentment. They had a long road ahead, rebuilding the alliance, rooting out remaining purist cells, healing the wounds physical and political this conflict had created. But for the first time since finding a wounded wolf in her parking lot, Arya felt certain they'd make it through. Not because it would be easy, but because they had something the purists would never understand. The strength that comes from accepting change instead of fighting it. The power of choosing your own destiny instead of letting fear choose for you. She was a human doctor who'd saved a werewolf king's life. Now she was a hybrid queen helping him save their world. Same person, different chapter. But finally the right story. 6 months later, Moonshadow Court looked nothing like the fortress Arya had first seen. The walls still stood strong, but now they were covered in murals, painted by artists from different packs. The courtyard, where she'd first arrived now, hosted a weekly market where wolves and humans traded goods and stories. The Grand Hall, where she'd been coronated, had become a meeting space for the Allied Pack Council representatives from 43 packs who'd chosen cooperation over isolation. The purist threat hadn't vanished entirely. Small cells still operated in remote areas, still clung to their ideology of separation and tradition, but their power had been broken. Their leadership imprisoned or scattered. Their message of fear replaced by a louder message of hope. Arya stood in what had once been a weapons room, and was now her medical clinic. A compromise she'd insisted on. She was queen, yes, but she was also a doctor. She'd treat anyone who came through her doors, pack member or not, supernatural or human. Currently, she was stitching up a young wolf who'd gotten into a fight with a rival pack member during a training exercise. "This is going to scar," she said, examining the claw marks. "Next time, maybe use words before claws?" "But words are boring," the young wolf, barely 18, protested. "So is bleeding. Yet here we are." She finished the stitches with practiced efficiency. "You're healing fast, so these will dissolve in a few days. Try not to shift until then, or you'll tear them." "Yes, Your Majesty." He scrambled off the examination table, nearly tripping over his own feet in his hurry to escape. Arya smiled. 6 months, and she still wasn't used to the title. Wasn't sure she'd ever be. The clinic door opened again. Callahan, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing civilian clothes instead of his usual formal attire. "Your 3 o'clock appointment is here," he announced. "I don't have a 3 o'clock. She stopped. "You made an appointment to see your own mate?" "You're always busy." "I'm always busy." Felt like the only way to guarantee we'd actually talk. He set the coffee down and pulled her into his arms. "Hi. Hi yourself." She melted into him, feeling the mate bond settle into comfortable warmth. "How was the council meeting?" "Long. Tedious." Morgana and Elder Hartford argued about border patrol protocols for an hour. I zoned out after minute 15. He kissed her forehead. How was your day? 4 patients, 3 stitches, one very dramatic teenager who thinks claw marks make him look tough. She pulled back to look at him. We got a letter from the Eastern Seaboard Pack. They want to join the Alliance. That's 44 packs now. Marcus Ironjaw's old territory. His successor is smarter. Callahan's expression was thoughtful. We're building something real, Arya. Something that might actually last. We're trying. That's all anyone can do. They stood together in her clinic, comfortable silence stretching between them. Through the window, Arya could see the courtyard market in full swing. A human vendor selling honey to a werewolf family. A young witch demonstrating divination techniques to a curious crowd. Species mixing, learning from each other, choosing cooperation over fear. I've been thinking, Callahan said carefully, about the future, about what comes next. Ominous opening. Should I be worried? No. Maybe. I don't know. He ran a hand through his silver hair. Celestine had another vision. She says within the year, there will be more like you. Humans who accept mate bonds with supernatural beings. The first generation of hybrids who choose to bridge both worlds. Arya's breath caught. More hybrids. People who won't have to figure this out alone. Exactly. And she thinks we think they'll need guidance. Someone who's walked the path before them. Someone who understands what it's like to be caught between two worlds. She understood what he was asking. You want me to create a program, support system for humans entering supernatural relationships. Only if you want to. I know you already have the clinic, the council duties, learning to navigate pack politics. I want to, she interrupted. I spent 6 months feeling like I was making this up as I went along. If I can help others avoid that feeling, make their transition easier. She smiled. Yeah, I want to do that. He kissed her. Slow and sweet. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in the last hour. I was starting to worry. I love you. You're brilliant and compassionate, and you make me want to be better than I am. You're already pretty good, for a werewolf king who nearly bled out in a parking lot. That was the best night of my life. You almost died. I met you. Fair trade. He pulled her closer. Arya, I know these 6 months have been chaos. The purest war. The political aftermath. Building the alliance. We've barely had time to just be together. But I want you to know that every moment, even the terrifying ones, I've been grateful you chose this. Chose us. Through the mate bond, she felt the depth of his love, his certainty, his absolute commitment to facing whatever came next together. I'm grateful too, she said quietly. I spent 6 years hiding in the mountains, convinced that being alone was safer than being vulnerable. You showed me that the scariest thing I could do was also the right thing. Accepting a mate bond with a cursed werewolf king was the right thing? Choosing love over fear was the right thing. The werewolf king was just a bonus. She grinned. A very attractive, occasionally infuriating bonus. Occasionally, I'm being generous. They laughed together, the sound filling her clinic with warmth. Outside, the market continued its bustling trade. Allied packs sent their reports. The world kept turning. Full of challenges and changes, and countless small moments of connection. Somewhere, purist cells were probably planning their next move. Somewhere, other threats were brewing. The future held no guarantees, no promises that everything would work out perfectly. But Arya had learned that perfection was overrated. What mattered was showing up, fighting for what you believed in, choosing to bridge divides instead of widening them, loving fiercely despite the risks. She'd left Denver to escape a life that demanded she be someone she wasn't. She'd hidden in the mountains trying to find peace in isolation, and then a wounded wolf had collapsed in her parking lot, and everything she thought she knew about herself had been challenged. She'd been terrified. She'd been angry. She'd resisted every step of the way. But looking at Callahan now, feeling the mate bond thrumming between them, watching the world they were building together through her clinic window, she couldn't regret a single moment. What are you thinking? He asked. That I'm glad I didn't let you bleed out. He laughed. Me too. That would have been embarrassing for both of us. The Alpha King, felled by bear trap and stubbornness. The trauma surgeon who almost missed the most important patient of her career. They smiled at each other, comfortable in the life they'd built from impossible circumstances and stubborn hope. Outside, a child laughed, one of the new generation being raised in a world where human and supernatural wasn't an either-or choice, where hybrid wasn't a curse but a bridge, where different didn't mean dangerous. Arya Winters had spent her whole life proving she belonged in rooms that didn't want her. Now she was building rooms that welcomed everyone, and if that wasn't worth nearly dying for, she didn't know what was. Come on, she said, pulling Callahan toward the door. Mrs. Chen sent another casserole. If we don't eat it while it's hot, she'll know and she'll be offended, and honestly I'm more terrified of disappointing her than I am of any purist's cell. The human who faced down Elder Blackwood is afraid of a little old lady? You haven't experienced Mrs. Chen's disapproval. It's weaponized guilt. Very effective. They walked together through the court that was becoming home, past wolves who nodded respectfully, and humans who waved cheerfully, toward a future that was uncertain and terrifying and full of possibility. The human doctor who'd saved a wolf's life. The werewolf king who'd found his mate in a parking lot. Together, they were rewriting the rules. And it turned out, the new story was better than anything Destiny could have written alone. Because the best stories aren't about fate. They're about choice. And Arya Winters had finally learned to choose herself, and found that choosing love could be the same thing.